All right, so the Industrial Revolution, picking back up, your notes say 1780 to 1850, but you might make a little note here that this actually started about 1750, but most historians are going to agree that it doesn't really implant itself, or it can't really be termed fully industrialized until 1780, but we're going to see some of this kind of start in the 1750s. I'm going to move up here and shut out one more row of lights. It's a little bright in here today. Sunny. So, we've hit a lot of revolutions, like scientific revolution, agricultural revolution, French Revolution, commercial revolution, price revolution. Am I missing any other revolution? American Revolution we've talked about. Yeah, that'd be an important one. Glorious Revolution too. So all kinds of revolutions. Now coming up to the Industrial Revolution. I would say, in my humble opinion, the Industrial Revolution is probably one of the most important, although I think the French Revolution very important. You love those ideas of equality, liberty. I mean, our country's based on it. We took the same Enlightenment thoughts, the scientific revolution, but the Industrial Revolution is impacting you right now. I mean, the air quality, direct result of Industrial Revolution. The technology, the cars, how you got to school this morning, direct result of Industrial Revolution. So it's an important one. You guys have had it time and time again, so we're not going to go too in depth. We're going to kind of go into an overview. So the first thing we need to talk about is going to be really the bottom line. Machines start to replace humans and animal power in the workforce. Okay? Significantly, and this is going to cause some issues. I'm sure if any of you remember the Luddites, we're going to have some human beings that are like, no, machines are going to take over the world. What will we do? We'll be replaced. So we're going to have some of that spring up because animals and people used to do all of the work. And now we're going to start to see, and we're going to recap some of those machines we talked about. Machines are going to be more efficient than one human trying to put out a product. Okay, and so this is the age of the machine. We're going to see us get into the steam engine for producing textiles in the 1780s. Hopefully you did not choose for the agricultural revolution the steam plow because that did not exist yet on that test. Yay, hopefully you did not fall for my trickiness. So we are going to get into that, get into the age of steam coming up. Secondly, we're going to talk about how Europe gradually transitioned from an agricultural and commercial society into a modern industrial society. Underline or highlight modern industrial society, age of factories, ladies and gentlemen. Steam power. Remember we were talking about that putting out system and that these merchant capitalists are going to realize, man, wouldn't I get my product a lot quicker if I put all these people under one roof instead of having to go from cottage to cottage to cottage? And so this is the birth of our cities in our industrial time. As late as the 1830s, only a small fraction of British working people were employed in factories, but by the mid-19th century, industrialism had spread all across Europe. So this is going to happen pretty quickly. You may make a note here. We're going to be talking about England. It's going to start in England, okay? Going to start in England, and we're going to talk about the perfect set of conditions that caused it to start there. You can put under number 2 here, cities. Cities in big circle. Remember when we enclosed all those lands in England? We'd forced all those common people off that public land. Yes?
Agricultural revolution did start in the Netherlands, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm trying to be confused. I was thinking of the cotton.
No, industrialism, so the farming, remember the Netherlands had, they had all this extra time in their hands.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Don't look at my test.
You'll never forget it though, you'll never forget
Don't
it.
look at my test.
Yeah, no.
That'll be an easy reclaim for your test resolution. So here under B, put cities here, guys. Remember, we'd enclosed all that public land. Where are all of those peasants going to go when they can't find work? They're going to go into the cities looking for work. And so we're going to have a surplus of workers waiting there for us as we start to industrialize. So that's important. And then thirdly, the economic changes of the Industrial Revolution will do more than any other movement. I mean, I don't care if you're the biggest fan of Isaac Newton ever and the scientific revolution has changed, blown your mind. The Industrial Revolution is still impacting us today. Okay, it is going to do more than any other movement to revolutionize life in Europe and Western civilization. Not since the development of agriculture during the Neolithic times had there been such a radical change in society. I mean, I'm talking, this is as big, if not bigger, than when we decided that we're going to stop being herders and hunters and gatherers, and we were going to sit our butts down and plant crops. Okay, this is a big deal. The Industrial Revolution. It still affects you today. So, roots of the Industrial Revolution, how did we get here? A lot of this we've already talked about. Okay, the Commercial Revolution. Remember, we have found a lot of European wealth during this time that we've been building up to here. We've been talking a lot about who's rich, who's not. Who's hot right now, who's not. The Dutch, and then the British, and then the French. And so all of this accumulation of wealth is going to grow us into the Industrial Revolution. We have spurred great economic growth of Europe and brought about the age of exploration, so they play hand in hand. This wealth, remember bullionism and mercantilism, all of this wealth expanded us across the world, which brought us even more wealth because we have the raw materials that we're going to sell back. So Atlantic economy and trade equals wealth, and this is going to give us the price revolution that we talked about. So inflation stimulated production. The more prices go up, the more people say, if I produce more goods, then I can make more money. And it just goes circular like this. And this is where we got that emerging middle class. You might want to circle middle class here. It's going to be our middle class that are going to want that little extra money to play with and say, hey, maybe that guy Jethro Tull and that seed drill thing he's talking about is pretty cool, and I want to invest some money in that. And so we're going to have our middle class with some extra money. We're going to have the rise of capitalism. So you can put a big mercantilism here and just draw an X through it. Okay, we're moving towards capitalism. You, with your own money, have the right to make your money as you choose. Okay, increased use of surplus money for investment. These are our merchant capitalists. I have more money than I've ever had before. I'm going to invest it in something, and maybe that something will be an invention. Okay, so investment in ventures, you might want to write instead of ventures there, inventions really, to make a profit. The middle class came to provide the leadership for the economic revolution. Okay, middle class can be very important to us right here. That new burgeoning middle class is going to drive us forth into the Industrial Revolution. The scientific revolution had been a root of the Industrial Revolution, and the fact that it produced the first wave of mechanical inventions. Remember, we had our telescope and our microscope and and all of these things that we had used for navigation. So the scientific revolution goes hand in hand with the industrial. And of course, that increase in Europe's population is going to provide larger markets. Okay, more people to buy things. It's a good thing. You want your population to be up, more money to be spent. Which is from the agricultural revolution. Very good. More food, more babies. More babies, more food. Just kind of keeps going like that. So proto-industrialization, I'm going to go quick here, but not too quickly. I spent a whole lecture on proto-industrialization with you, or the putting out system, or the cottage system. Mr. Butts was laughing at me. He's like, I won't even call it the putting out system. And I was like, I don't know why you're so afraid of saying that. I was like, my seniors were,
His name is Butts. What does he have to do?
I was like, my seniors were adults enough to handle the putting out system without any skirmish. So we're going to go back to that because we've already done this, but I want to emphasize how we couldn't have gotten to industrialization without proto-industrialization. And so remember, when rural industry was a major pillar of Europe's growing economy in the 18th century, the rural population had been eager to supplement its income. Anybody remember why they had to supplement their income? Because they just got what taken away from them? Their land, the Enclosure Acts. You might want to write as a result of the Enclosure Acts right here. Hopefully you got that correct on your test today. Merchants in cities sought cheap rural labor rather than paying guild members in towns. Remember, those guilds were like, we protect our workers, we're like unions. You have to pay them a certain amount. If they get hurt, you can't just go find a new guy. You have to pay their family. You have to provide them money. You can't just leave them sitting here. And so they go out into the countryside. They put the product out into the countryside, hence the putting out system, because it's cheaper. Manufacturing with hand tools and peasant cottages came to challenge the urban craft industry. Okay? And so we have these little cottages where we put all these machines in. Now, but what do we say was the problem with a cottage? Like, you live in a big old fancy home if you're in a cottage? No. And so what do you think is going to happen as these machines get bigger and bigger as we move towards industrialization? We're going to need more space, okay? And then it's going to make more sense, instead of building bigger cottages, to move to where all these excess workers are into the cities and build factories. Okay, and so that's just the trail that we're going to find right here. So the cottage industry, if you remember, we've talked about this. The merchant capitalist would provide raw materials such as wool. They bring it to the little cottage and say, hey dude, I need 10 pairs of pants. I need you to turn it into textile by this time for a rural family. And then merchants would come back and pick it up and they would sell it for a profit. Okay, more than what they paid our little cottage industry workers, but it still provided a new source of income. Wool cloth, circle or highlight or underline wool cloth here. This is going to be one of the reasons England goes first, guys. It's because of the textile industry. Okay. Wool cloth is very important to the Industrial Revolution as we started. And the cottage industry was essentially a family enterprise. Remember, we had our spinners. You might have hired spinsters, where we get the word spinster, come in and help you with the spinning of the wool. And then you had the husband and wife trying to find more thread and more spinners. You had little kids in the tubs washing the cloth, washing the wool, dyeing the wool. So a family industry. Problems, if you remember, I spoiler alert, totally ruined it for you in our lectures right when we came back from Christmas, that there were going to be problems with the cottage industry. Namely, the peasants, like any other good person, especially like any other good high school student, is going to say, oh, the paper's not due until the 31st. I'm going to do it the 30th at midnight. They got busy. They went out and drank. They went to weddings. And they said, we'll just make it as fast and quickly as possible, and then we'll just turn it over to them the next day. We'll wait until the last minute. Well, the quality wasn't that great, okay? You can tell a paper that's been whipped out at 1 in the morning under 4 cups of espresso, or one that's been worked on all week. So the quality wasn't that good. Then the merchant capitalist refuses to pay the guys. And then they don't have money and they get into arguments. And who has the upper hand in this situation? The people with money, okay? And so the system's going to fall apart. We have problems. Rural labor was unorganized and difficult to control. Merchant capitalists are then going to be like, I am tired of this headache. These country people are not worth a thing. I need to figure something else out. And so the problems with the putting out industry are also going to bring us back into the cities and the development of factories. Okay? So results of this, thousands of poor rural families will be able to supplement their incomes. Unregulated production in the countryside results in an experimentation and the diversification of goods. Okay, so we do have some negatives, but we have some positives that are going to bring us forward. Instead of just making the same old thing, people in the cottage industry are going to get bored and they're going to say, hey, instead of just making the same pair of gray pants, maybe I should try to make something like this. We're going to get diversification of products. More products mean more money. More money means more capitalists. Okay, so all of this moving us pretty quick ahead. The cottage industry had flourished first where? England. This is what you were thinking of when you thought of revolution. The agricultural revolution, the Netherlands, but England's going to be industry. So the cottage industry flourished first in England because of woolen cloth or textiles. Okay, so right next to here, because of woolen cloth or textiles is why it started in England. In 1500, half of England's textiles were produced in the countryside. By 1700, that percentage was even higher. The putting out system in England will spread later to continental countries such as France and Germany. Okay? What's another reason other than textiles that you think that England might be ahead when it comes to industrialization than our continental Europeans?
Because weren't they also more united than, especially Germany?
Yeah, especially in united, meaning they probably had a lot less what? War, okay? We've been on the continent, and every time we step back over there, there is a new war that we're talking about. Napoleon and France and all of this craziness. And so they don't have time to be industrializing. They're just holding on to their pants right now, just like, let's get out of here, okay? It's like Humpty Dumpty. They're trying to put everything back together again. So England also has a lot less war. They're not spending as much money on war, so they have money to put into other things. So if you remember, I'm not going to go into great detail with proto-industrialization technology. There's some pictures. You know, we have our flying shuttle up here. We have our spinning jenny. We have our water frame. And then we have our spinning mule. We went over this in great depth in Unit 4.2. They were all on your test today. I'm not going to go back over them, but just highlight next to this section. You need to know what technologies were pre-steam power. You need to know how these products got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and are going to necessitate more room. okay? You need to know who invented them, and you, just like you saw on your test today, you're probably going to have to be identified who played what role. Like Jethro Tull was responsible for the seed drill. Okay, you need to know these things, but I'm not going to go back over in great detail. What you need to know for the Industrial Revolution is these are getting too big to fit in cottages with the workers inside. And so we're going to have to build factories, and the machines are going to get bigger. With the water frame up here, you're going to then have to be close to a river, okay? And so it's going to take strategic planning and water and all of these things that are going to increase us moving out of the cottage industry into industrialization. I think I covered all of that. So next, have to know that England was the first country to industrialize. Have to know this, okay? In the 1780s. We actually started in about the 1730s, but 1780s, it's pretty concrete. Okay, 1750s, we're getting pretty close. We started to see use of water power. 1780s, England is the first country to industrialize. Began in the 1780s, but will not be complete until 1830 at the earliest. Okay, so we won't be fully, like what we would say, full steam ahead, industrialized until 1830, if even fully then. This part has no impact on continental Europe until after the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815. Why? They're busy with war. They are busy with their new national razor, the guillotine. They are too busy cutting off people's heads to be worrying about selling product and making textiles, okay? They are busy with other things. You need to know why continental Europe does not industrialize along with England. They are just busy shedding blood. They got other things on their mind. So there are some economic and social factors that we have to talk about here that also lead to England industrializing first. It's not just because they're having a little bit more peaceful time. They have some significant, what do I want to say, individualities that are going to allow them to industrialize more. First is going to be land and geography. Geographic isolation from the continent offered protection and separation from many of the continental wars. Remember, Britain has taken themselves out of the Quadruple Alliance. They're like, you guys are crazy. I want nothing to do with you. I have a problem with France, but now France is all weakened, so I'm backing out of here. Like, I am going to be on my own. I'm going to stay over here. And they're isolated, so they're able to do that. We have some great natural resources. We have a good supply of iron and coal. What do steam engines need to be powered by? Yeah, water and coal. Coal is going to heat the water that's going to make the steam. Coal is heavy. Coal is a great natural resource. Coal is expensive to ship, and we're going to get into how England gets away with all of these problems. So coal is a big one, having a natural supply. I meant to put a map on here where it had like all the different coal plants. I'll try to bring that up next time, but it's pretty much like there's not any room. Reminds me of the air raids on England. There's like a spot everywhere. That's what the coal mines look like too, that map. Wales and northern England are going to be our most important sources, and foreign assistance was not required. Okay, just highlight that. They can go to war with whoever they want if they want to, and they're not going to be cut off from coal. Okay, they don't need help. They're self-sufficient. That's important. Waterways are going to offer a source of alternate power for factories and navigable transport for trade and communication. Britain has a ton of waterways, rivers. I mean, this is why Britain was like the Vikings' favorite place to attack, because Viking ships could go up into like 6 inches of water. They were so fast. So they could go up like very shallow water, all disembark, run up a river, do whatever, get right back on their ship. And it's for the same reason that England's great for industrialization. They have all of these waterways, which makes transportation cheap, especially for heavy goods. What's a heavy good? Coal. Okay, so waterways are going to be awesome here. And not only does England have natural waterways, they are going to start to build canals that connect them together so then they can go anywhere within England with their goods. No part of England was more than 20 miles from navigable water. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Especially when you think about the same water you're going to transport stuff on is going to give you water power. So they just have some really great geography going on for them. The Industrial Revolution is going to grow out of England's expanding role in the Atlantic economy of the 18th century. Remember, they have taken over the Dutch. They are now our Atlantic economy. They've had the Asiento, slave trade. They've been able to do all of this. They are going to be expanding. They have the Royal Navy, which is now one of the greatest in the world, and so they're going to have protection for their ships. Another thing, and I didn't put this in your note, and I think I just must have had like a brain aneurysm or something, because I meant to. I thought I typed it. Write that they have no internal tariffs. France and Germany and all of these other places have tariffs you have to pay to trade your goods within your own country. Britain has none of this. So you don't have to spend as much money to make product and sell it. So write no internal tariffs. And this is what really holds back the French and the Germans as well. Not only their wars, but they have tariffs. So you have to pay extra money just to trade things within your own country, not just with other countries. Okay? Am I going too fast for you? Okay. A lot of this is review. I hope it's feeling like review. So, next is going to be our agricultural revolution. We're just going to hit really closely here because we've already covered this. So the agricultural revolution was vital to the industrial revolution. There was a supply of cheap and abundant labor emerging as the enclosure movement. It all comes back to those enclosure movements. As it forced those people off the land, they're going to be like, crap, need a job, gotta go into the city. It's going to leave us a surplus labor. Forces people up into the cities is what it really does. So we are going to have the revolution in agriculture making it possible for fewer farmers to feed larger numbers of people. Because agriculture gets easier, you don't have to have everybody farming. You can let those extra workers that were off of the public land go into the cities. So fewer farmers frees up more of a labor source for our industrialization to make other goods. So this means there's an increase in crops, but fewer people having to farm. If there's an increase in crops, then the prices are going to go down. And that makes you able to feed even more people, and people will have more money to spend on what? If your food costs less? Other stuff. Other crap. They're going to be ordering all kinds of crap out of magazines pretty soon that we're going to see. Cheap, abundant labor is now in the city, so we're setting up the perfect circumstance for cheap labor in the factories. The British population, due to the agricultural revolution, is going to double in the 18th century. Demand for goods within the country will increase, and people were free to move around and search for other forms of employment. Okay? What you really need to get right here is you might want to write at the bottom of your agricultural revolution on page 4, money available because food is cheap. Okay? Money available because food is cheap equals extra money for capitalism, especially for our middle class. Large supplies of capital will now become available due to over 2 centuries of profitable commercial activity. We're spending less money on warfare. British merchants and gentry had prospered during the numerous wars on the continent, so they had actually benefited from the continental European wars. Remember the reparations that have had to be paid, etc. Remember, we have the Bank of England from 1694, a central bank, and so we have a large supply of capital. We have a large supply of money to start lending out and for people to start borrowing. So they might not have to have their very own money to go out and say, I want to invest in a factory. Hey, I think this guy, Mr. Watts, has got this really cool idea for some steam engine, and I might want to put a little bit of money into it because I have some money to spend because I can borrow it. And so this is where we're going to keep moving forward with the Industrial Revolution. And now we're going to even have insurance. So if you're kind of not one of those guys that likes to roll the dice for all the money, well, you can still be an investment, a merchant capitalist, and you'll just get that money insured. Okay, so we're going to have insurance companies pop up to back your money in England. So all of this is going to lead us to where we're going to pick up next time with our entrepreneurs coming back. We've talked about them, so that will just be review as well. Those with extra money who are going to take the risk to make a new product. We'll pick up there. I'm going to give you a little time today, since I'm going to book some computer time, to maybe talk with some peers, look back over before we get into too much new information. Look back over into your French Revolution Napoleon packets and start framing or outlining your FRQ. Because Friday's going to get here. We know Friday comes really quickly this year. It's just flying by. This also gives you a chance to ask me any questions before we get to Wednesday, which will be a shortened time. And I will try to get us some lag time that it's not already taken. Any questions about where we're going, where we've been? Should have been a lot of review today, right? Pretty easy peasy. Thank you. All right.
That's the other one.